Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today in the community of practice. I think I am familiar with most of the participants, but introducing myself very quickly, I am Rafaela Machado, Programs Manager at the FIA Foundation. Joining us today, we'll have two of my former colleagues at iRAP, so very excited to welcome and have here presenting
Right.
my
So
colleagues and
what we're
friends.
doing is basically
So, I think there is someone unmuted. Okay. So yeah, very excited to invite here Shanna and Monica. I will not take a lot of your time because I know you have a lot of very exciting things on the CycleRAP to present. But just as a brief introduction, so most of you might be already familiar with the importance of addressing active mobility as one of the ways to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and we want. Part of this is making sure that pedestrians and cyclists will have proper infrastructure and proper means to use these modes of transport. And as part of these initiatives globally to advance on these topics and make sure that we will be addressing with the right solutions, the right contexts. So iRAP has been developing a lot of very helpful tools to make sure that the safety of streets will be properly assessed. And we've had earlier here in the discussions of the community of practice as well, a bit on star rating for schools, focusing on pedestrians. And I'm very excited to have today sharing with you the CycleRAP focused on the cycling element and the cyclist user. So with no further ado, I'll just pass the word to Monica and to Shanna. For those who don't know them, Monica is the Global Innovation Manager at iRAP. She oversees initiatives of the iRAP for the Accelerated Intelligent Collection of Data for Road Safety Assessment, CycleRAP, that you will see today, which is a bicycling and micromobility risk assessment model. Monica has been part of the iRAP team since 2015, joined as the program coordinator for iRAP's projects under the Bloomberg Philanthropies, Bloomberg Initiative for Global Road Safety. Monica has a keen interest in improving urban environments for people, for all people, for a healthier, safer, and more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable future. She holds a master's degree in development planning and a bachelor's degree in psychology and the arts. Monica lives in the Netherlands, so the proper location to talk about cycling today. And Shanna is a civil engineer, and I must say, a very close friend of mine. I'm very excited to introduce you here with more than 10 years of experience in road design and road safety. She holds a master's degree in transportation system and concluded her PhD in the same field. She is one of the global road safety leaders certified by GRSP and Johns Hopkins University. Currently, as project coordinator for iRAP in the Innovation and Development team, she manages and provides technical support to projects involving big data, road safety, and community engagement. So very excited to pass the word to you. And yeah, the floor is yours. I think you're on mute, Mon.
Okay, hopefully you can all hear me now. And I'm not sure, Shan, is the presentation displaying correctly?
It's not full screen, but we can see your screen.
Okay, let me just figure out which one. Sorry, just had all sorts of problems downloading things and getting it to share the correct screen. So give me 2 seconds and I'll just get myself sorted and work out a way to go full screen. Okay. hopefully that will be full screen any moment now. Fingers crossed. Okay. While that is, oh yes, here we go. While that is sorting itself out, it's really nice to be here today, and thanks so much for the opportunity, and really nice to, of course, see Rafa again because we miss her dearly. But anyway, that's a side. But thanks, Rafa, for the kind introduction. Shanna and I will talk about CycleRAP today, and as Rafa introduced, it's a tool that really focuses in on micromobility, active mobility, sustainable mobility, and I've been with iRAP now for this is my 9th year, which is quite unbelievable. But many of you are familiar with iRAP and the way that it does the way that it has, well, its methodologies that are centered around infrastructure assessments. And a few years ago, we really figured out that there was kind of a gap when it came to what or to how you can manage and understand risk for bicycles and other forms of light mobility specifically. And CycleRAP was born. So just before I get into the details and the history of kind of why it came about, just very high level, for those of you who are not familiar with what it is, it's basically a risk evaluation model for bicyclists and light mobility users. So it really puts those users at the center of the model and the center of the evaluation. And it does this by identifying high-risk location and provides data to help reduce crashes. So very much along the same lines as the star rating methodology. Because we are iRAP and we are global, we have to make sure that our models can be applied anywhere. And for CycleRAP specifically, we also wanted it to be applicable to all types of infrastructure. So if I've been living in China for the last 7 years and I've now moved to the Netherlands, and really when I develop a model and when I'm involved in the development of the model, there's a real view to make sure that the evidence that's underpinning the model and the applicability really can be applied everywhere. And that's a really important fundamental core value we have at iRAP. So you can take this model and you can apply it in Australia, in Latin America, in China, in the Netherlands, and it will have the same results. It will accurately predict the risk for those sections. We also made it quite a flexible tool. It can be used independently on its own, or it can be used in conjunction with other types of assessments. They could be the star rating assessments, or similarly, they could be other types of risk assessments like conflict data using conflict data and other sorts of ways of pinpointing risk on bicycling networks. The model also includes a safety treatment model, which means that it uses the risk rating. So what it does is it looks for patterns in the data, so certain combinations of features, and then it prioritizes those by the risk rating. And that way it recommends safety treatments. And Shanna will go into this a bit more later on, but we have now piloted it. It's got 10 major projects, major projects in 10 countries, different thing. But it really has been now applied quite expansively, and we've got a network of suppliers working on it as well. So just like a quick snapshot into what it does. So it registers about 50 data points, if you like. This data tends to be a lot more simple than what's in our star rating model. So it looks at things and it says, is it there or is it not there? And so it's quite an easy, simple model to use and rather fast compared to the more complex star rating models. And it breaks down the crash types into 4 different types. One is conflict with vehicles. The second is conflicts between bicycles, or between light mobility, or between bicycles and light mobility, whoever is using the facilities. The third is conflicts with pedestrians. And the fourth is crashes that do not involve other users. I think I've gone over most of this before, but just to reiterate, we really aimed when we developed CycleRAP to make sure that we created something that was easy to use. It had to be affordable. It had to be practical and fast to use, but it also needed to be able to guide people as to what to do next. And this is one of the things that iRAP, both at star rating models and now CycleRAP, is quite unique in. There's plenty of methodologies out there, particularly using conflict data, which will tell you where the problems are and they'll tell you where the issues are, but it really lacks the information or the guidance for road managers and bicycle network managers to go, okay, what do we do? What do we do about the problem now that we have an idea about where it is and what the problem is? So we really want to be able to help prioritize that investment and provide some safety KPIs, but just overall improve the quality of the management of the cycling related assets and infrastructure out there. So where did it come from? This is quite, it's one of my favorite stories to tell, actually, I'll be honest. But there was some studies done by Paul Scheppers, who was in Zwolle, where I'm now sitting in the Netherlands. And this was back in 2014 or thereabouts. And he did a study of 12 different countries and found that based on hospital data, they found a very, very large proportion of people ending up in hospital due to bicycle crashes did not involve a direct conflict from another vehicle. That number varied between 60 and 90% of hospitalization. And it also, on average, accounted for 17% of fatality. So this is not getting hit by a car when you're on a bike. It was for other reasons. And the range of fatalities was between 5 and 30%. The problem with turning up in a hospital and not getting hit by a vehicle is that the crash data doesn't make it into traditional systems. If you get hit by a car on the road while you're riding a bike, the police get called normally, and that makes its way into a crash report of some sort. If you fall off your bike, if you collide with another bicyclist, what often happens is an ambulance will turn up and take you away, even if you're severely injured. And that crash never makes it into the crash data. So this creates a real problem for those managing bicycle networks because they don't get given that data. They know where all the vehicle problems are, or most of them are. The crash reporting is very reliable. It's not reliable for the bikes, which means that when it comes to trying to reduce the bicycle crashes, it's really hard to know where to start. And this is the big problem in the Netherlands, where they've seen substantial increases in bicycle-related crashes. In fact, Sweden's got the same problem. They declared that cyclists are now the biggest challenge when it comes to Vision Zero. The problem is no different in places like China or Australia or anywhere else. We need better data, and this is the problem that CycleRAP was created to try and address. We've also got this compounded problem of the fact that we've got changing cities, more light mobility vehicles, more people are taking up bicycles. We had COVID in the middle of all of that. We've got new food delivery services and new freight delivery, all using light mobility. It is really good from an active mobility and a sustainable transport point of view, but it's really challenging when the infrastructure is not there supporting this and making sure it's safe. So I'm going to now give you a little bit, like lift the hood, if you like, on the CycleRAP model and show you a little bit on how it works. So the process for doing a CycleRAP assessment is very much like the other iRAP models in that you collect data. The model then uses that data to determine risk, produces risk scores. It then looks at the risk scores to suggest safety treatments, and then it has the safety treatment recommendations. And the risk scores and the safety treatments can be mapped. Shanna has actually created some nice dashboards for different projects where you can drill down, you can see the data mapped, you can be looking at different indicators. It's a very useful tool that you can drill down into. So we created, now I think there might be a few, let me just tap through before I start talking. So there's kind of this logic to the model. It's based around a crash initiation logic, if you like. And there are 4 things that can initiate a crash. So if you're on your bicycle, you can be trying to avoid something. We always assume there's going to be an avoidance maneuver because there'll always be other bicyclists, at least. There might be other people, whatever. There's 2, loss of control. type crash initiations. One's related to speed. So that's in the case that you might be coming down a hill and have a sharp corner and some gravel is on the path. That would be a speed related loss of control. The other one's a loss of function. That's where your wheel gets stuck in something like a tram track or a grill opening. The fourth crash initiation is getting hit by a vehicle. So they're the 4 initiators. And for each initiation, for each type of crash to be initiated, if you like, there needs to be things present. We call these crash triggers. So for instance, if you have other people or obstacles on the path and you'll have something to avoid, that's a trigger. We then have things that increase the likelihood that the presence of that trigger will end up in a crash. So these are things like a really narrow path, or if you're trying to avoid something, hit a slippery surface. We then say, okay, well, let's say you've got the trigger and you've got things contributed to it. What are the possible outcomes here? Now, there's a few. 1, you're going to hit whatever's on the path. 2, you're going to try and avoid it and succeed and get past and go on your merry way. Or you might be trying to avoid it and hit something else, maybe a cyclist coming the other way. Or you might be leaving the path. In all of those situations, we then look at, well, what are the conditions? If you are leaving the path and there is a road with traffic that's traveling at 80 kilometers an hour, there are also severity outcomes in that. If you are leaving the path and there's a grassy patch and you can recover and you don't fall over, then that's how the model evaluates the severity factors in it. So if you like, it gets split into these 2 bits. The first part is the likelihood of the crash occurring, and then the latter part is the severity of the crash, and together they make the CycleRAP risk score. So this is the list of the 10 countries, but I think now, Shan, and you'll go into a bit more detail, it's a bit out of date. So we have been quite busy. We started off with the using CycleRAP in the Sabrina project, which was the Danube region Interreg project, which looked at the Eurobella routes throughout the Danube region. We then had a big international pilot that we did across 5 cities last year and launched the results in Bruges at the UCI Bike City Forum. And following that, well, as part of that project, we put together a big project report, and I only saw the other day it's been downloaded nearly 1,000 times, which is really incredible. It's also split into a number of case studies which give practical examples on how to use CycleRAP. These were the cities that we did the international pilot. So it's Barcelona, Madrid, Fayetteville, Bogota, and Sao Paulo. And here are some of the examples of some of the challenges. So in each city, we encourage them to assess a network of between 50 and 80 kilometers of different types of facilities. And we didn't want them to focus only on where they think there are problems. We wanted them to capture a broad range of types of facilities that they have, some off-road paths, some shared paths, some on-road bike lanes, some streets with nothing, no dedicated facilities, and to be able to compare the risk scores across each of the cities. So I won't spend too much time on this because I realize we only have an hour, but Fayetteville actually got featured, Fayetteville and Bogota, well, the project as a whole got featured by the New York Times, and they've done some great interviews with Fayetteville, including on Fox News. I never thought I'd make Fox News, but there we go. Okay, and so part 4 is where you can learn more. So our website, it's cyclerap.net. You can also access it through the iRAP website. We've got a lot of tools and resources there. We've got the case studies as well as the project reports that we've done. The user guides and fact sheets are also there, and you can access the demonstrator tool. And I think we've got the demonstrator tool available in either 4 or 5 languages. I'm having trouble keeping up now. But there's more languages getting added quite regularly. And with Velocity this week, we're pushing, well, we've already got the demonstrator in Dutch, but we'll be having the user guide and methodology fact sheet in Dutch released as well. This is a screenshot of the demonstrator tool. So this is where anyone can jump on to the website, try it out. It's a little bit slow because it runs off Power BI in the background, but it does give you those scores by by crash type and tells you what the overall CycleRAP score is. The overall level, if you like, because it's broken into 4 risk levels: low, medium, high, and extreme. It uses a weakest link logic. So basically, if you have one of the 4, medium or high, and that's the highest level of risk, that's what that overall segment will rate as. This is the user guide. Again, it's on the website, but it really explains what we are looking for when it comes to recording the data, and also how to set up a project. And then we've also got the methodology fact sheet, which is all the evidence and research that has gone into the model and how the model works. And we've also got a guide on the safety treatment model. And over to you, Shan.
Thanks, Mon. I don't see any questions in the chat, so perhaps we can keep going, and then we open for questions later on. I will just very quickly, I think if you stop sharing, Mon, then I can share my screen just to make it easy. Thank you. To pass through the slides, and I hope you can see my screen now. So now that you know what it is, how it works, and where you can find more information about it, we thought of maybe going a little bit more deeper into the project and how you structure CycleRAP projects, and how can we collect data, process data, and what type of results we are expecting, and so on. So before going into much details, let me say that we have this flow charts that show more or less like the standard way of establishing the CycleRAP project, but this is quite flexible. And since the model was launched and the amount of projects that we have been seeing until today, there's different ways where you can use the model and get results and establish process to really implement changes on the road. So I'll go through these standard 6 steps, but we can, if you have later on after these presentations, if you have ideas or where you could apply the model or so on, get in contact with us, that we can establish a process that will make it easy for you to use the model and apply as well. So basically in this flowchart, we start with the network identification. Then we go to data collection, data processing, and we calculate the results, we generate the treatments, and we go to the implementation. So let's go through each of these steps with a little bit of more detail. So the first one is the network identification. So the idea of this process is really identifying where the model can be useful based on the project objectives or the city goals. It's really understands exactly what is need to be done, what type of information you need to get, because as Monica was presenting, we are not only calculating the risk and giving the opportunity to the cities understand the risk in their network, but we are also generating results. Sometimes you can use this tool to compare before and after, so you can also use CycleRAP on designs. So it really, that part is really focused and should be really connected with the project objectives of cities objectives. So you could use in major traffic corridors, for example, to try to understand barriers to use bicycle on commuting trips, maybe less mile connections. But since we are like in this CHI initiative, so something that you could be doing as well is maybe identifying in these school zones, in the surroundings of a school, if children or youth are traveling safe by bike to schools or not. So maybe these school zones or the surrounding of the schools should be the networks that we will be assessing using CycleRAP. So there are plenty of options. We usually say that CycleRAP is like in the meso scale, so it's not micro level of details of assessment and not macro as well. It's in the meso layer, but can influence the micro and the macro anyway. So the second step, after we identify the network that we want to assess, we go to the data collection process. So basically the data collections depend on video data. So we are basically collecting images of the facility or of the network that we want to assess. there are partners or what we call CycleRAP suppliers that know exactly how to do this. But this is also something that is quite flexible. So with projects, on those projects that Monica was just mentioning with the 5 cities, we, together with the with technicians of the municipalities, we give them some instructions, and in the case of Fayetteville and Bogota, they instrument a bike on their own, and they collect the data on their own. Because basically what we need, it's a camera that is able to capture geolocated data, so you need to have a type of GPS associated, so we usually recommend like GoPro cameras or something like this. And you put the camera into the bike and collect the data, and that's it. We only not recommend to put the camera on the helmet, because then when you move your head when you are riding, the images are not really centered on the road. So there we have some type of quality assurance that we need to some quality requirements from the image, but it's really easy to collect the data. In other projects, for example, we use already a data set of image that the city already have to generate the results anyway. So that's the data collection process. It's super simple and quite flexible as well. So this is basically what we are expecting. Sorry if you are getting a little bit dizzy, because this video it's speed up a bit. But this is basically a video, a regular video of the assessment, and then we are extracting images every 10 meters, every 20 meters, depending on the project. And then we generate information in all of these 10 or 20 meters. With this image, then we go to the data processing, that is basically capturing all the attributes that CycleRAP requires to calculate the results. So this is an example of a coding system from one of the CycleRAP suppliers. You can do this in different ways. So some of the partners, these partners that we call suppliers, they develop their own tools to extract these attributes. But for smaller projects, you could do exactly the same thing using the demonstrator, for example. So there are again different ways of doing it, but it's looking at the infrastructure and capturing these elements like lane width, what is adjacent to the facility, if there is a parking lane in the case of this example, what type of facility it is. So in this case, on-road bike lane, and if it is a pedestrian crossing and so on. So there's a lot of these 50 data points that Monica was talking about that we are capturing from the video data. Additionally to that, we will also need speeds and flow data. So this is basically very important for the model as well. So as I said, you could use the demonstrator to do that. Here is a screenshot of the demonstrator. You can see all the attributes that we are looking at. As Monica said, it's just present or not present, most of the attributes, so it's really easy to capture the information you need. And in the case of demonstrator, the results is calculated automatically for you while you are including the data in that. Because this is the next step, right? It's calculate the risk score and map the results. So I'll just pass through this because Monica already presented this to you. But one thing to mention here is that the model, as any other road safety model, any other risk assessment model, is really sensitive to speeds, right? So we are looking for mean speeds in the case of CycleRAP. But the model works more or less in this logic. So if the environment, the speeds that the cars are using to travel is less than 30 kilometers per hour, we will allow maybe cyclists, or the model will allow cyclists share the space with vehicles. As this speed increase, the segregation levels need increase as well to make sure that we ensure cyclists are traveling safely in this environment. So the model is super sensitive to speed and follow this logic of the 30 kilometers per hour or less and the 50 kilometers per hour or more. So what do you expect with the results? Basically, we are expect to mapping these results, so in a very clear way of identifying where are the high risk locations, the extreme risk locations. So so cities can prioritize the areas for intervention based on risk. You can also create some graphs or other type of styles to identify the peak, let's say, the peak points where the risk is higher and where the interventions are more urgent. Then with the scores calculated, we go to the next process, that is generating the treatment. So as I said, the model is not only highlighting where the risks are, but are also proposing treatments or interventions. So basically how this works, it's based on the attributes that was extracted from the image. Some combinations of attributes will trigger some particular recommendations. So the model has 25 treatments divided into 4 groups. So as you can see, some of the treatments are quite specific. For example, clear the facility when you have fixed obstacles or non-fixed obstacles, or when you have something imposing some restrictions in the useful width of the path for cyclists. But there are also more general recommendations, that is to pinpoint locations where more detailed assessments is needed, or an audit or something like this. So for example, in the case of intersections, we will highlight that there's something wrong with that intersection, that the approach needs to be revised. So this is what the model will recommend. But there are also implementations or modifications related to the facility type, and also something to create more cyclist-friendly roads. So reconfigure or remove parking, install traffic calming, create some type of measures to control the speed of the vehicles or the speed of the bicycle. So this is usually the treatments that the model can recommend. And then we go to the implementation, that it's basically the implementation is where we count with our local partners and with the cities to take these results, make the best of it, and really see getting all this information to make changes on the ground and improve safety on the ground. That it's really what we aim for, right? So CycleRAP, of course, is just a tool. We need to have the community engaged to do that and to advocate for those roads. So before I finish and we go to the questions, if we have any, I would just want to very quickly show one of the last projects we worked together with one city in Brazil called Belo Horizonte. And in the case of this project, they were actually, the company was hired to redesign the cycling routes they have on the border of a very famous lagoon in the city. But there was some resistance with the new designs and with spending a lot of money to do these changes in the infrastructure. And this is something that is quite common that we have been seeing in projects, that usually cities are demanding some type of some ways to really quantify benefits, because people are still against, for example, taking some space from cars to create cycling facility. So they need to really show in a very quantified way of how this will improve safety overall for all road users, but especially for cyclists. So it was more or less the case of this project. And I select this one because basically all the analysis were done only using the demonstrator. So this is something that you could do right after the end of this meeting, for example. So that they basically select some key locations around the 11 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. The project was redesigning 11 kilometers around that lagoon. So they select some key locations where they knew they had some problems before, and they really want to show how the new design were really improve safety. So as you can see on the top right of the screen is the before situation, and in the bottom right of the screen is the after situation. So they just used the demonstrator, they changed the attributes based on the project, and they were able to show to the municipality, but not only, but to the community as a whole, saying, well, we are doing this and we are putting all these resources into this project, and because there is some safety benefits, and we are not accepting having a very risky situation for vulnerable users as cyclists in this case. So we really need to do something about it, and we are doing investments that will be really a game changer for those cyclists riding in this facility. So this is a type of project that it's really simple to implement. They are not needing any special skills to do that. Since it's the first time that this company is using the demonstrator, we were in contact with them to solve some questions on the attributes and exactly what we are looking in each of the attributes that we can do with you all as well if you are keen to use CycleRAP. But they are basically using the demonstrator, that it's an free online web-based tool to use the model. So there is different ways of structuring this project. Of course, if it's very large assessment, you can engage with us or one of the CycleRAP suppliers that it's also listed in the CycleRAP website. But we can also discuss how to create in-house capacity, build some capacity inside of your organizations with training and so on. So yeah, we are quite flexible. Our main goal here is, of course, increase safety for cyclists, and we hope CycleRAP will be useful in the work that you do daily in road safety. So I think that's it from my side as well. I don't know if you have any questions. We can happily answer those, Monica or I, or myself.
Great. I see Susanna has a question. Thanks, Shanna. Thanks, Monica. And yes, Susanna, feel free to make your question.
Yes, no, thanks a lot for this very nice presentation, the very nice maps, the evidence which is really created. I have actually a couple of questions. I just start with maybe one, because you mentioned, the implementation. Of course, then you rely very much on the willingness of the local stakeholders, especially municipalities, I guess. Now, from our experience, it's always very important to have municipalities, or I thought in the Bogota case, which you presented, but in general, to having these municipalities strategies, policies, which are already there, right from the beginning, already on board. Maybe if you can just have a couple of words, like how important, or how do you actually engage the stakeholders who then go from the mapping also to the action? So that's one question. Second question, I will just limit it to two questions. So the second question is the data collection. You just mentioned, like how easy it actually is. It does not need a lot of knowledge. So again, asking like, who are these collectors? And I'm asking this specifically because we at Fondation Bodnar, we have a lot of, like data collection through civic engagement, especially youth-led, young people-led organizations, which are actually doing the data collection for their municipalities, not cycling now, or not on transport, but on other things. And they even do in some of the places, they do it as a service, as a business, basically. And just also again asking, like, what is your experience of different data collectors? Like, who are they, and what could be how could we could we consider actually reaching out to making that also more like a civic engagement project? I have more questions, but I leave it here.
Would you like me to start, Shan?
Yes, go ahead.
So on the first question, on the question of implementation, I think CycleRAP is a tool that's very, very diverse in terms of who can use it and for what reason. If you have cities being the instigators at the beginning, saying, okay, we need a tool, we found a tool, we'd like to use it, and tell us how, which indeed has happened. We've been working with the Land Transport Authority in Singapore, which has been doing this. We had cities directly involved in the big international pilot that we did. That's the best way, because then they sort of discover what the tool does and how to use it and what it means for them, and you get kind of this integration, which is great. But it can also be used in an advocacy sort of way, and it doesn't have to be sort of by your bicycling clubs. So we had who's actually a master's student, I think, in the University of Berkeley, that used it to evaluate existing facilities in Addis Ababa, because there is a cycling strategy that's been developed for the city and a plan which details all the types of infrastructure that they're hoping to install over the city. And he used it on both, I think it was on both the existing facilities that have started to be built, plus some of the designs in order to demonstrate to the city which ones are working well and which ones aren't, and how improvements can be made. And that's a really effective way to really engage the city to say, okay, like, we can see you've got the cycling strategy in place, that's fantastic, but here are the improvements that can be made. And I think that's the unique thing here. We get approached by lots of different small organizations, like the Initiative for Safer Roads in Germany, which is now becoming a supplier as well, saying, okay, we already do things like this. We also have a organization in Manila doing a similar thing. Like, we already collect data about bicycling paths. We want to integrate the CycleRAP model because it really gives us those a clear methodology for scoring the risk, plus it tells us how to do things about it. And some of those organizations are also quite already set up with municipalities being service providers, and so they're sort of adding CycleRAP into that mix of services being provided. So it is really diverse, and I don't think we necessarily want to corner it into one type of operating mode, because what we're seeing really successfully and amongst a big network of suppliers is that, or a growing network of suppliers, I should say, is this diversity of applications and all having their merits. On the second one, the data collection, and maybe Shan can happily add to this, but again, it's something that is quite diverse. A city can go out themselves and collect this data with something as simple as the GoPro camera. You can have suppliers with much more sophisticated cameras going out and collecting this data. You can be crowdsourcing the data. We've been experimenting quite a bit lately with Google Forms, which is a nice way to get someone who's standing on the street and being able to complete a Google form and submit it, and then all of that gets collated in a Google sheet in the background, and then we can convert it and pin the risks ratings on a map for people with pictures that are taken through the form. So there's so many different ways that the data can actually be collected. There's a lot of potential for automatic detection, and particularly this model was optimized for automatic detection, which is why a lot of the choices are just saying there's something there, there's something not, and you're not being made to choose what's the highest risk thing in this segment, because that makes writing code for it so much harder. So we tried to really optimize the model for automatic data collection, and there's certainly some suppliers moving in that direction already.
Yeah, and maybe very quickly, just to add to that, I think it is a good momentum for CycleRAP and cities, because most of the cities that we have been in contact, they know they have issues, especially with e-scooters, for example, but they don't know exactly how to address or how to prioritize. So the tool is really fitting on their needs. And we also have some projects that were like inputting the assessments as part of other projects. So the project had other objectives, but they were collecting the data anyway. So since we are collecting this, why we're not just regenerate the risk results and put some safety lens also in the outputs that you are getting into those projects. So yes, I think there are different ways of establishing, as Monica was saying. And in the terms of regarding who is collecting the data, as I said, I think we have nice experience with like technicians in the municipalities going out there and collecting the data. We have two huge success cases of that. But there is another experience that was quite interesting in São Paulo, where we were in contact with actually the Cyclists Association in the city, and they had a project called Citizen Audited, let's say, something like this. So the delivery, you know those apps that deliver food. So you have some cyclists engage on those types of apps, and they were participating in this project because they were riding in the cycling facilities of the city every day, and they were seeing like a lot of issues. So they got in contact with the association to just take pictures of those issues and collect everything to deliver to the municipality in a sense of inform like a maintenance plan of the network they had in the city. But they had like 8,000 images already there. So we took the opportunity also on this existing image to have a look, rate those based on CycleRAP results. And then the maintenance plan is not only focused on maintenance, but also prioritize the locations based on the risk results. So I think it's super possible to engage community, also because the cyclist community is quite engaged overall. So it's really good to have them as part of the project, because they know more or less what are the issues, what are the networks that need to be assessed, and so on. So yeah, different ways of establishing this.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Shanna. And now Tej has a question too. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce well.
Thank you, Rafaela. My name is Tije, or TJ in short. Thanks, Shanna. Thanks, Monica, for the presentations. My question is about the treatments and the micro, meso, and macro level you touched upon, Shanna. I didn't study the slide with all the suggested treatments there, but I would say they are all at micro level. And my question is, does CycleRAP also provide suggestions for treatments which are more at meso or macro level? Let me explain. It could well be that like a sort of high risk score could be explained through poor network planning. So that cycle routes are planned on busy arterials, while quieter streets, a block up or down, could be more suitable. So you could say that what would be great for a user or decision maker at tactical level, for instance, is triggered next to reviewing the suggested treatments on protected intersections, the separation, etc. Whether he or she or else would be triggered or informed or inspired to also review, for example, solutions to, well, replan the network a bit, or to consider, well, general speed management options or traffic recirculation kind of plans, because these kind of measures in some case could also be cheaper than infrastructure development and also contribute to cyclist safety.
Do you want to touch on the micro, meso, macro one? It's unfortunately we have a very good representation of it. Unfortunately, not on the slide. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I certainly can, and thanks Tia for the question. So when we started out, the other gap we sort of figured it out there was that there were things like in terms of best practice and what already existed. There was like your equivalent to your cycling safety audits, like your road safety audit type. Like, let's look at this intersection. Let's look at this section of a street, without being able to kind of get to a bit of a higher level. And when you did get to the higher level, it was really high level. It was basically looking at your whole network and with very few bits of data. That you might have traffic speeds in there, you might have facility if you're lucky, and traffic flows, and that's kind of what was going on. So there was a real like missing bit in the middle, and that's where we pitched the CycleRAP. So it's not an efficient tool to use on every street and road in your network. That's not the idea. The idea is to network selection in terms of what you choose to assess and why is really important, to optimize what you get out of it. And this is where in some of the city case studies that we were working, the pilots, where we were using, like getting them to select a range of different types of facilities, or having a look at an area and looking at different options. And so when it comes to things like network selection, you might be looking at, okay, we have cyclists using the local streets, the main arterial, which has this type of facility, plus they're using sidewalks in this area. So you can really use the model across different paths through an area, and then start comparing and going, okay, what works? What do we invest in? What do we actually shift users away from because it's not safe? So these sorts of discussions can still happen, but it really starts right at the beginning of the project when you're saying, what are you assessing and why, and what are your objectives? What do you want to get out of this? And once you know what sort of problems or questions you want to answer, that's when the selection of the network becomes a lot more obvious and useful. I'll let Shan go into some of the specific safety treatments questions, but yes, speed management is in there, but it does look at the combinations of things that you collect the data on. But the idea is that instead of, I guess in terms of the meso level of analysis, it gives you a lot more that the professionals, if you like, the consultants that come in and provide their expert opinion to work with, rather than spending a lot of time looking at small sections. And I think we see this a lot in cycling projects where there tends to be like these a lack of attention to the whole network issues and seeing it as a connected thing. And sometimes a lot of attention gets given to a very small section, and it ends up with a multi-million-dollar budget for a bridge, but the rest of the network's kind of left neglected. And so that's what we kind of wanted to steer away from, and have a bit more of a holistic take on the cycling network.
Yeah, no, and I think you can still use, for example, for cross-sectional analysis, as you were saying, like if you have a very high speed or a big avenue in comparison with a local road, you could easily use the demonstrator to see the difference in safety in one aspect, in one option to the other option. So you can still use for planning, let's say. But yeah, it's more focused on structure networks. We usually say that sometimes, for example, if you can have additional data or additional information that where cyclists are riding, because sometimes they are not really using the facilities because they have some safety issues and they prefer to use some different road, for example. So it's better to assess the different roads, maybe both, for you to have a look on the complete safety scenario. And regarding the treatments, I think we said it's meso, because as I said, we are not really saying you should do that. In fact, we are recommending treatment. So it's basically said for this particular situation, these are things that you could do to improve safety. And this is the benefit that you get, because we calculate in the model also how the risk will go down if you apply this particular treatment. But it's really from the cities to understand their local situations and see if this is the best option based on the budget they have, for example. So this is more or less why we are saying that it's meso. So if we are saying like, okay, this is one option that you have here, for example, is, I don't know, install some type of segregation. Another option is for you to reduce the speed of the roads, and then you can have a different level of segregation. So we are not saying do this or do that, but these are the possibilities for you to reduce the risk. So
Thank you.
Not sure if we answer your question. I hope so.
Thank you. And now Corinne.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, I'm not putting my video on because I haven't been well and I'm not very presentable. But I just have a few questions. So I work for East, and we work with NGOs across Eastern Europe, Central Asia, etc. And we are doing some projects around advocacy on cycling. So I was just wondering a few things. Firstly, whether you have any plans to translate the demonstrator into any other languages, or if not, how we might think about doing that possibly. Whether you would provide sort of training online to like a network in different countries. Sort of is when you do the assessment and use the demonstrator, how would we submit the results? Is it like star rating for schools where we submit and it's verified by an engineer, or sort of how does that work, and how do we feed back results to you if you want us to feed back results to you? And then in terms of the networking, is there like a minimum sort of kilometers that you would recommend assessing? I think that's all my questions.
You and me, I can start then, Mon, and then you go up to it. So regarding new language in the demonstrator, we are super open to it. Actually, we are the language that we had there. We are working with in partner with other organizations that say, well, it would be really nice to have it in Dutch, for example. So then they support us with translations and we implement it. So if there is something, for example, that will work for you, we can get in contact, and we are using some type of like AI solutions, but it's always best to have someone that is native to that language review, and then we can implement. So this is something that we can work in collaboration with that. Regarding minimal requirements, there is no minimal requirements on length, really depends of the project. You can also do in spot locations. So if you are doing star rating for schools assessments as well, you could use the same image to generate CycleRAP results. So there's no really minimal requirement to that. Regarding quality assurance and training, so we have some trainings online, right? So they are not really implemented yet, but they are very soon will be online as well. People will be able to get more information about the models, how it works, more details than we have, you know, in 1 hour. And so this is really almost there to be launched. And regarding to quality assurance, I think it's much more simpler than Star Rating for Schools. You will see if you try to use the demonstrator. It's basically present or not present. And we also have like a coding guide as well for you to have an idea of exactly what we are looking in each of the attributes. So although we are looking for quality assurance, especially in the first applications of the model, and we are doing this one by one until now. So if you want to use the demonstrator, if you have questions about the coding, just send us an email and we can have a chat about this. But it's much more simpler than the Star Rating for Schools. So it's much more straightforward to coding, and until today we are expecting like just a few issues, not major ones. I don't know, Mon, if you want to comment on that.
No, I think you've covered it all quite well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks all for the questions, and Shanna and Mon, thanks for the answers. And now we are sharp at the end of the meeting. But thank you all for the fruitful discussion, and I'm pretty sure Mon and Shan will be very happy to provide any additional information on details. And yeah, thanks a lot, everyone. And I see you in another community of practice soon.